speakers. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Yes,
We're going
I did
out.
explain.
Oh, sorry, did I?
I did explain
Perfect.
to James. Hello, YouTube. Welcome to our weekly recording of the talk show for talkers. I know nobody's here yet, but I know that you'll all be streaming in to watch us, and I do feel sorry for you. No, I don't. Of course, I don't. So, as you can see, there are 4 people here today, though I'm going to disappear in a minute because I shall be behind the
Moira,
scenes.
can you hear me?
Yes, Paul, I hear you very well.
Okay, I want to test something else for a second. We're not live on YouTube, are we?
Yes, we are.
Okay, well, it's quite okay for,
It's
we got to
quite
do
okay.
technical setup. Now, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you not quite
No.
so nicely, but
I can hear you too, Paul. Yeah, we can hear you.
Hold on.
We can hear you, Paul. Can you
Yeah,
hear
we
us?
hear you.
I can hear you. Speak to me now.
Yep,
Can you
we
hear me now?
We
I
hear you
can't
now.
hear you. Can
Okay,
you hear
well,
me?
there's a
You can
problem
hear
on
me?
your
We
end,
can
so,
hear
because I
you.
can hear you.
Okay. Okay. I've got a, I don't have a problem. I have a problem that I need to sort out, but I'm not going to sort it out now because I won't be using my external microphone.
Oh,
Oh,
shame.
I'm already, for some weird reason, when I plugged a few days ago, when I plugged my external microphone in, it didn't work properly, or it caused my laptop not to work properly, and I haven't got it sorted out yet what the problem is.
That's very
But
strange.
anyway, James, we didn't come here to discuss my technical problems. We came here
Well, that
to.
was very interesting, lads. Thanks very much. Goodbye.
Yeah.
I love it. I hope I didn't frighten you away there when I asked you, did you have your donkey and your lance ready?
So this is the podcast called Irish Talkers. And if anybody on YouTube wants to download it, they simply go to wherever they download podcasts from, search for Irish Talkers and subscribe. And if you
And
want to
you'll
go to our
find us.
website, you go to irishtalkers.com, where you'll find another subscription button. And otherwise, write me a letter. I'll give you my address at the end of the show and put stamps on it. And I'll send you back a postcard with the details of how to subscribe.
Right. Well, we have somebody viewing.
Sometimes I say things on this show, James, and the others
Cringe.
don't hear me. They go deaf and they say nothing.
I'm going to say something now, lads. I have to be out of here for 4:45. I have a class at 5 o'clock.
Well, I have to be out of here earlier than that.
Okay, that's good. So
On video. That's it. Right.
So as
let's
soon
get
as
the
our
card.
sound editor is ready to,
Well,
and our
everyone's in the
production
wrong-
manager,
Everyone's in the wrong place.
everyone's in the wrong place,
Yeah,
right?
Which is my fault.
Actually, it's
So non-video
you're looking
podcast.
at it
We've gotta
from
go
the
back
wrong
to
angle.
four. We've got to go back to 4 people. Right. So we need Ted on the left. Then we need Paul second. Then we need Moira third. Then we need James fourth. And that should be it. Hide self-view, hide non-video participants.
This is to do with Moira moving people around the screen, I think.
Well, it's all.
I
yes,
think
it's all
you're
to do with.
Moira's practicing or
Well, no, it's all to do with the stream.
Control-
and how you
control,
appear on the
uh,
stream.
it-
It's how you appear on the stream.
Yeah.
And
rationalization, James, for control freak.
well, if I get you in the wrong place on the screen,
She
then
puts us wherever we want.
it says the wrong person in the wrong place. And I was just getting James into the right place because
There's always the reason.
yeah, well, it's all.
Is that why I'm in the dunce's chair?
Yep, as usual.
Anyway, how long before we start?
About 2 seconds.
you know where the word dunce came from, Paul?
Where what come from?
Dunce. Where the word dunce came from?
Oh, it's probably a French word which started out as D apostrophe uns. And uns is so de uns.
No,
It's-
actually, it was a Catholic priest in the 1300s. His name was Duns.
Oh yes,
Duns.
Duns Scotus.
And yes, Duns Scotus, and he was also a friar, Franciscan friar.
Yeah, he was
And
the guy who invented the Irish breakfast, wasn't he? He was a friar.
He was the fellow who was classed as very much ahead of his time, and that's where the word came from.
I didn't know that now, Ted. That
Yeah.
is fantastic.
Because he created, this hat, the dunce's hat. That came from it. Then the dunce's hat, and you'd be made stand in the corner. He was an educationalist.
He's one of these kind of famous people in the so-called Dark Ages
Mhm.
who brought light to the savages.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was.
Okay, let's creep out of the Dark Ages and come into the 22nd century.
I have to
21st
apologize
century.
to the Germans, the French, and just about everybody outside the Roman Empire by saying that. 'Cause they were not savages; they were barbarians.
Big difference, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
In other words, they didn't eat you for breakfast, they just murdered you.
Okay,
No, they were an early rugby team that used to
Oh, yeah, the best.
they used to play against the Romans. They were called the barbarians.
Yeah.
now then, folks, let's call order to this disorder.
Frivolity.
Yes, disorder will do. And Ted, are you ready?
Yes, Moira.
3, 2, 1, go.
Hello, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters, listeners and friends.
And
You're
guess
very
what, Ted?
welcome.
Guess what? Moira's done her usual.
Okay.
That's strange. I
That's
could've
like in the
sworn
Olympics, James. We have the Olympics here,
that
and
you
that was a
turned
false
forward.
start. Now, if there's another false start, she's replaced.
We get James to do the technical stuff.
Yeah.
But it's
Take
a
two.
strange thing that I obviously turned Audacity on after I turned my sound desk on.
Audacious.
Usually it does it automatically. I don't have to write. Okay, Ted, we are ready again.
Okay.
And Paul has left his desk. 3, 2, 1, go.
Hello, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters, listeners and friends. You're very welcome to the Talk Show for Talkers on irishtalkers.com. Our email address is info@irishtalkers.com. You can find us on Facebook as the Talk Show for Talkers. We look forward to your comments, questions, feedback. In fact, we regard this as your evaluation of what we do here. You can also listen to previous shows on our website, irishtalkers.com. We also publish the Public Speaking Weekly, and this is a roundup of links from the internet. It's all about Toastmasters. It's about public speaking, how to build your confidence, how to become a leader. So look out for the newspaper link on our website. My name is Ted Malamphy, and I'm joined again this week by the prolific, persuasive, personable, passionate Paul O'Mahony.
How do you do, listeners? It's wonderful to have your ears again.
And thank you for that, Paul. And on today's show, we will have the usual mix of a thought for the week, a word for the week. We most certainly will be having a guest interview on the second segment tomorrow, so please do come back for that. In the third section, Paul will be coming up with a very interesting topic where he will be asking us, what is your district's mission? Do you know what your district's mission is? Do you know where you're even living? Particularly if you're a Toastmaster, you must know what your district's mission is. And if you don't, Paul will be telling you. So that's what Paul will be doing. On the fourth and the final segment.
Excuse me, Ted. Sorry. Just to tell the listeners, I also misunderstood Ted, and I also thought he was asking, I was going to give you to the question, why are you living?
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm definitely not going to address the question of why you are living. That's your business and none of my business.
Okay, Paul. You don't like getting into philosophical arguments, no?
Look, that word is too long for me. I like short words.
Okay, so all right, fair enough. I was just kind of embellishing the script there. I completely went off in a tangent. So Paul is going to be talking about, do you know the district's mission? On the fourth segment, we are going to be coming back to this wonderful guest that we're going to be interviewing tomorrow. And he is going to give us some nuggets and gems about being a VPPR, because this man, and it is a man, I'm after giving away the gender now, the gentleman that I will be interviewing on segment 2 comes to us from the Rose of Tralee country. He comes from Tralee Toastmasters, and his name is James Finnegan, and he's with us in the studio now, and we've never done this before, but James, you are very welcome to the Talk Show for Talkers.
Well, thank you very much, Ted. Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you very much, Moira, for the lovely invitation. And I look forward to the experience.
Well done, and we'll be looking forward to that experience also in the second segment of this show, which will be going out live tomorrow. So, Paul, my thought for the week, and this is one I think is quite nice, and I think it's quite apt for, particularly for the times we live in, or for, indeed for any time. Whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. So whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. What do you think of that, Paul? And that was given to us by Johann Wolfgang van Goethe. Thoughts, Paul?
Yeah, word of the year. Unmute yourself, Paul. The yes, that guy is one of the best people to turn to for quotations. By the way, he 19th century German. But the key thing about this, Ted, is about being bold. Now, whatever about what you said, I was brought up in a family in which if I was bold, I was in trouble. You're a bold boy, Paul. Now, this all started to change in my life when Unilever came up with the name Bold for washing powder. And that was the next thing. That washing powder, of course, cleans your clothes for you. And that's not a bad thing at all. But then it got on to, I went to live in the UK, where the word bold means totally different thing than in Ireland. To be bold is to be courageous and to be willing to step forward. And, you know, the charge of the Life Brigade was a bold endeavor. I mean, it was foolhardy too, but let's not go around that track. So I love the idea, though. I love the meaning that a boldness is connected with magic, particularly magic of the words you use, because I forget all the other words you used. But
genius, power, and magic.
Right, genius, power, and magic. Fantastic.
Yeah.
If you ask me about my thing about the whole quote, I think it's badly constructed because it had a very good beginning. Then it put something in the middle, which is, you know, quirky, takes you off on a tangent, and then it came back to the beginning again. So I would have preferred put the beginning and the end together to say, look, whatever you have in your head, you can always start it.
Right.
There's always...
So the actual quote is, whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. So drop the you can begin it.
No,
boldness has genius, power, and magic in it.
Well, look, I'm suggesting that you drop all the genius and power and boldness, and you put the first sentence in, which is about whatever you can think and dream
about.
And always begin it. And then what's the last part of the quote?
The last part of it then is boldness has genius, power, and magic in it, which it has. I think it's a word that would be apt for particularly entrepreneurs.
Very good. Yeah, particularly entrepreneurs that are not stuck in the 1950s.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the person who I would apply this to now jumps out at me, or the light goes off straight away, would be Richard Branson.
Well, it's a bold move to promise people that you'll take them into space. And as far as I know, he might have originally signed up to go to Mars. I'm not totally sure about that.
Yeah, he did. That's right. Yeah.
He's offering, you know, a Virgin trip to the moon. Now that's a bold promise. And I guess the Tesla promise is bold. And the Toastmasters, not so much the promise, but what the Toastmasters envisages is bold. And we'll come to that on another day.
Yeah. Do you know what was bold? Do you know what was extremely bold out of him, in my opinion?
Oh, yeah.
To name his company Virgin. Now, originally, when he was 17 years of age, as you probably know, he started writing a newspaper in college. And then at 21, he started his own record company. Well, it wasn't a record company, but he started selling records, which developed into a record company after. And then he wanted to get a name for the company, and he was going, what he wanted to call the company was Slipped Disc Records.
Ted, would you mind doing that in a speech? Because you've obviously been reading the biography of Richard Branson, and I have it on the shelf but haven't read it. But
I've read it a couple of times.
Yeah, I'd like to to do an abrupt twist in the conversation
Okay.
and kind of curve it. So an abrupt twist and a curve.
Mm. You're
I
going to
wonder
give
if
us the word.
I wonder, is there a one-syllabled word for that? An abrupt twist.
There is.
All right. Well, tell me that word. Okay, word of the week, listeners. Quirk. Okay, it's both a noun and a verb. Quirk. And it means to curve something or to abruptly twist something. It also has to do with the space between on a string, a necklace, between a beads and in between the beads. The thing about it is that it first entered the English language in the 16th century, about 1536. Now, I wasn't around at that time, but I did my research. But it's usually used to be a quirk of fate. That's a quirk of fate, an abrupt twist in what was ongoing. But it's also possible to say that somebody has a quirk accent, or an accent which sounds like a quirk, to be more exact. Quirk is a noun. And you can also quirk something. That is twist and bend it into shape. So there we are. It's a handy word because, you know, you could be developing a speech or an idea in a certain direction. You say, now, let me take you on a quirk. And some of the people wake up and say, what does that mean? You know, perhaps I've won a prize. Of course, you can say to somebody then, last thought, that was a quirky speech. And that, to be exact, means that there were twists in it. But if it was quirky, it probably should have more than one quirk, don't you think?
I know a fellow with the name of John Quirk. That wouldn't do, would it not?
Let's move on then, Ted. Terrific episode. James Finnegan has had a demonstration, the poor man.
Of the quirkiness of you and I. Well done,
total
Paul.
surprise,
And that wraps up our first segment of the talk show for talkers this week, listeners. And we hope you'll come back tomorrow when you'll be listening to the waxing lyrical James Finnegan.
Is Moira awake?
Moira is always awake, but she kills her microphone just in
All
case.
right.
Because
What was the timing like, Moira?
perfect.
Yeah, I thought so. I
Yeah,
was watching the clock here.
It's absolutely fine.
Good.
Now, James, could I ask you to? Are you on a laptop?
Yes.
Right. If you tilt your screen forward towards you just a little bit, it'll raise you up in the screen. And the idea is to get your eyes on a level with where our eyes are, which is sort of on the top third. So you can still go a little bit more. That's
How's that?
perfect. Absolutely perfect. That balances it up very nicely.
That's nice now, yeah, that's
it
good.
looks much nicer on the stream. Move my camera over a bit.
He's, you know, not Miss Congeniality, Miss Sophistication, and that's not the word I was thinking of actually. Miss Elegance.
Miss Elegance.
Elegance. That will do nicely.
That's a nice word.
It's an elegant solution to.
Well, it's all down to aesthetics.
Oh, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, I am an aesthete. Now, it's
Much nicer than sit up straight, you dwarf.
Well, there is that as well, but I wouldn't comment on that.
Actually, you're right, James. And you know what is happening to quite a lot of people at the moment, because everybody is Zooming, particularly from a work point of view. People haven't got their devices up high enough. Constantly they're looking down, and the amount of people that I hear are talking about pains in their neck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's very important to keep your laptop, the top of the laptop should be level with your eyebrows.
Yeah.
So you're not encouraged to look down.
That's right.
You're
Very
encouraged
good.
to look straight at it.
That's right. It's very important. Okay.
It does make a difference. It does make a difference, yeah.
Oh, it does. Yeah, it does.
I'm going to do that now.
Okay,
I
off you
confess.
go. Turn off your mic.
Well, only if he's going to nether regions.
Yeah, Mara,
No.
you can call me back in and I'll
Yeah,
I'll
I just
invite
want
James
to
after
talk to Paul a bit first. Paul, your sound issue. When you change your microphone to the external microphone, do you check your speaker location? So
Yes.
is your speaker location should be back to your computer sound, same as system.
Yes.
Or yeah,
But
built-in output.
when you
let's
say, do I,
well, change your
Depends on what you-
change your microphone. Don't do it yet. Change your microphone to your external microphone, and then come down and change or select your speaker and select built-in output, and see if you can hear us. Because your external speaker is so much better.
just a second, and I'll see if I.
Is it the external speaker, Mara, or the external microphone?
No, what's happening, I think, is when he changes to his external microphone, do you do that on your laptop itself, or do you do it in Zoom? Do it in
Oh,
Zoom.
me or Paul?
No, Paul.
Me.
Paul.
Oh, yeah.
Paul.
Sorry.
No, we can't hear you, Paul. We're not hearing you, Paul. We're not hearing you, Paul.
Is he talking, Mara?
Yeah,
Can he hear us?
no. We
I
cannot
can't see his screen.
hear you. You can't see his screen. Why not?
No,
Paul, look at us.
I can see James, all right.
Yeah.
No, we can't hear him. James can't hear us, no, either, can he?
Yes, he can. He's
No, I
just
can
saying-
hear you, Ted. And I
Oh,
can
can
hear
you,
Moira.
good man?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't hear
I
Paul
can't
either.
hear Paul.
I can't see him either.
No, we can't hear him at all now.
Sounds like Christmas Day to me.
No, we can't hear you, Paul.
No, you're not muted, but we can't hear you. And I just
He's still
I lip
rattling,
read
you know.
the word
He obviously,
I lip read the word problem there.
yeah, he obviously can't hear us either, Mara. A while ago, he could hear us.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with him. Well,
We
I
better
don't know.
send him a message on.
I have.
Send him a message on the chat now.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I didn't think about the chat. Yeah, we cannot hear you. There's no point in talking, Paul, until we can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Yeah, we couldn't hear you, Paul.
Now, let me just ask you a few questions. When you're changing your microphone, are you doing it within Zoom, or are you doing it at in your computer, in your computer default?
Within Zoom.
Okay. And when you presumably plugged or switched to your external microphone then, and you were talking away and we couldn't hear anything. Could you hear us? When
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that.
And what was your speaker set to in Zoom? In the Zoom audio menu, what does it show? What did it show as when you changed your microphone? No, we've lost you again.
Or can we get on with the second part and Paul can be sorting that out in the meantime?
Yeah, the trouble is that we need to be able to hear him. No, okay. Paul, forget it.
Unplug.
Forget it.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I had
it's not working. Oh, now we lost you again.
Have you lost me
No,
now?
it's okay.
No, we
Okay,
haven't, no.
that's okay.
You're
You're
back.
back. You're back. Okay, no worries. We'll sort it out later, or you can sort it out later. Right, so I'm going away again. So we're back to the three of us. Now, Paul, you need to tilt your screen forward a little bit. I say get yourself central. That's lovely. Actually, you're in a bit high now. You come down a bit if you want. Now, if you do that, you're sort of moving off screen. Okay. Right, so we're on section 2. And one, come on. Okay, Ted.
Yes, Moira.
3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters, listeners and friends, to the second segment of the talk show for Talker this week. And you will have heard us yesterday at the top of the show telling you that we have a very special guest today. And this special guest is coming all the way from the kingdom, which in Ireland is a part of Ireland that we are all very fond of. It's Tralee. It's Southern Ireland. It's the neighbour of Cork, which is the largest county in Ireland. And this man is the VPPR that has been picked to represent VPPRs of District 71. And our very hard-working VP of Communications, Elizabeth Jordan, has sent this gentleman on to us to tell us what he thinks about the role of VPPR involves. So, James, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much indeed, Ted, and thank you for the invitation.
You're more than welcome. And isn't that fantastic that this initiative that Elizabeth is after coming up with to get people such as your good self to come on here and talk to us?
Well, Elizabeth is a very dedicated and hardworking district public relations officer. And as Paul will be able to confirm, she asked a number of us to help her in social media aspects.
Mhm.
Elizabeth Jordan is in the UK, and during the last number of months, we've struck up a very good, close working relationship. So I'm not in the slightest bit surprised that she's your private go-to girl to get people on.
Oh, she's brilliant, yeah. And have you any idea what this interview entails that we're going to have now?
I prefer to come in these things with a fresh mind and an open heart, and we'll go wherever you want it to go.
Yeah, that's beautiful, actually. And thank you for those sentiments, James, because that's exactly the way we look at it too. Because if you were to have asked me yesterday or the day before or last week, if you were to say, can you give me an idea of what the questions are? I'd say, no, I can't, because we want people to come at us with a fresh perspective and an open heart. So basically,
Absolutely.
questions about your experience since you've joined Toastmasters. And James, we ask the same questions of every guest on this segment. So you're up there now with the world champions of public speaking, with international presidents, with district directors, with division directors, and everything in between.
So what you're telling me, Ted, is that you've got all the good people out of the way, and now you've come onto the fellow who's cheap and available.
Well, I must say you're very perceptive. I wouldn't have expected anything else from somebody coming from Kerry. Well done. You know what they say about Kerry people? I know no, you're not a Kerry person. You've just come to live in Kerry, which was a superb choice, probably by the grace of God. But do you know what they say about Kerry people, James? They say if you ask a Kerry person a question, he answers you with a question. So if you were to say to somebody, can you tell me where the post office is? He'd say to you, is it a stamp you want?
Would he?
Well, that's what they say anyway. So James, I'm going to kick off with the first question, even though there could be other questions in here that may not necessarily be of the 5, but because of the way this conversation we'll do it this way. So what brought you to Toastmasters?
Well, it's very strange. I think Toastmasters is one of the best kept secrets going, because I was vaguely aware of its existence, but I couldn't define what it was. And in September 2019, Tralee Toastmasters had an open evening, and they were showing a broadcast of the World Championship Public Speaking International Speech Contest final. And I went along, and well, first of all, I was intrigued. The second thing of all is that I think the welcome that I got from the group that were there was so personal and touching and warm, that when they said we have another meeting in town in 2 weeks' time, I kind of felt morally obliged to come along.
Yeah.
And of course, when you've made the first jump, the second jump isn't quite as bad. So when it came to the third jump, I thought I better bring the wallet with me. And I joined in, and it's not anything that I've ever regretted since, apart from I wish I'd done it before. I wish I'd done it earlier. But of course, life is like that, and you're off doing different things. And that experience is great too.
Yeah, that's lovely, James. That's lovely. I love the analogy of the jump, because that's really what it is. So in actual fact, you're only in Toastmasters just over a year.
About coming up to 18 months.
Yeah, so you're only a baby Toastmaster.
But that's all right. But as you said, I mean, I'm only in Tralee 30 years, so I'm still a blow-in.
Oh, you are actually, yeah, that's true. Yeah, and you'll all, and I can tell you this now, my man, you'll always be a blow-in since you're down in Kerry.
And
what
don't
has
think I
been-
don't know it.
Yeah, and even though you're in Toastmasters for 18 months, what has been the greatest benefit to you?
Without a doubt, it's the people I've met.
Mhm.
It's the people. It doesn't matter what organization you're involved in. It doesn't matter what area or purpose they're designed to help you with. It's people that make the difference. Now, I can wax lyrically about the education that I've gathered, the experience, the knowledge, but if you were to ask me what the one fundamental rule is, it's the people.
Yeah, and that, I think I think they're all shouting at at YouTube. He's right. He's right. It's the people. It's incredible, actually. It is like your own tribe, isn't it? That everybody is so helpful, and you're 100% supported when you walk in the doors of a Toastmasters club, irrespective of what country you're in, of any part of the world.
Well,
so,
I can prove that because for the last year or so, we've been playing on Mr. Zoom.
Mm.
And I have taken that opportunity to travel around the world and to visit Toastmaster clubs literally around the world. And although we haven't that physical contact and we haven't that welcome over a cup of tea that is so important here in Ireland, and especially here in Tralee, but we still have a warmth of welcome. I think poor Rich Hopkins must have thought I was stalking him at one stage, because no matter where he turned up, there I was. And
very good.
so and you meet people that you wouldn't have had that opportunity to meet in, shall we say, normal circumstances. Even Elizabeth Jordan,
Mm.
She might have been the name at an end of an email, but I wouldn't have met her. I wouldn't have spoken to her. And likewise with Paul there, your compadre. We've never actually met, and yet this is the second time we've met this week.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic. And I don't put that down to Zoom. I put that down to the pandemic.
Well, the pandemic, a wise man told me a few months ago that you should never waste a good pandemic. And I say that with due recognition of the millions that have been affected. And
yes, of course.
Indeed, as someone whose wife, daughter, sister, and niece are nurses on the front line, it's awful. And yet, I see members of Tralee Toastmasters, for example, who are not computer savvy, not technically proficient, and yet in a very short time, we've learned how to use this. We're still learning how to use this, but it's kept a contact, it's kept a personal touch to our Toastmaster meetings. And I think we should give ourselves a little bit of credit and a little bit of a pat on the back because of that.
Yeah, I would support you in everything you said there, James, particularly from the point of view of I didn't want to be flippant or belittle pandemic. It is very stressful for lots of very good people, and people have died from it and people are suffering from it. But in every cloud, in my opinion, there is a silver lining, and definitely we're communicating better. So to date, James, what has been your biggest Toastmaster challenge?
That's a very good question. I don't look at it as challenges. I look upon them as opportunities. I've taken part in competition. My attitude in life generally is that when someone asks me to do something, I'll say yes, and then I'll worry about the technicalities and the formalities afterwards. So, I mean, I've had opportunities now to work at local level, area level, at district level. I've taken part in competitions. I've taken part in education forum. I've just been appointed assistant area director to Michael McGeegan. I'm already traveling around the clubs in our area and also abroad. So to me, it's all been win-win-win.
Superb. And if you could, what would you change about Toastmasters, if anything?
That's a very good question. I would listen to the people that have just come in, because they are looking at things with fresh eyes. I think for an organization to continue to develop the way Toastmasters have, I think you have to adapt and adjust, and to use that magical new word, pivot, to the new opportunities and the new challenges. I think there's great gifts within the membership, and I think that should be tapped into without losing that local area camaraderie.
Superb. And what keeps you coming back to Toastmasters, James, even though you've answered it, but I'm going to ask you specifically, what keeps you coming back to Toastmasters?
At every meeting, I learn something new. For example, last night I was in Newcastle West and I learnt that Stole My Thunder came from an old theatrical anecdote back in the old days. And I thought, it's little nuggets, and it's little personalities, and it's the wealth of life experiences that the membership hold.
That's fantastic. And I agree with you. Every day is a learning day. And when you come out after your Toastmasters meeting, the amount of education outside the entertainment is absolutely incredible. So, James, it's been my pleasure and my privilege to have interviewed you on the Talk Show for Talkers as the February VPPR. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ted.
How was that, Moira?
Well, very good, but you didn't preview the next episode.
Oh, yes, sorry.
So you should always
do you want me to come back in and cut in?
Yep.
Okay.
So just continue, because so.
Okay, and count me in, so Moira.
Yeah, I will. Let me just key you up, because I just did the wrong thing. I always used to have to do shift click to start recording.
Oh, yeah, different now, is
then,
it?
Yeah, then they changed it that you just do click to start. And I'm still doing mind you, this was about 18 months or 2 years ago, but I still think of shift click. Okay, Ted, 3, 2, 1, go.
And we look forward to you joining up with us again tomorrow, because Paul is going to be talking about a very important subject. What is your district's mission?
Okay, that's good. All right, talk amongst yourselves for a second or two whilst I sort.
James, that was lovely. That was a lovely interview. You have a lovely command of the English language.
Thank you very much, Ted. It
You
was great
didn't
fun.
learn all that in Toastmasters in 18 months.
No.
Well done.
Not
well
my
done,
first barbecue.
Well done. So you're living in Tralee for 30 years. That's interesting.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a
I
lovely
was
spot.
born-
Look, Tralee is lovely.
It is. It is. I was born within the sound of Bow Bells in London,
All right.
and I spent the first 30 years of my life in London.
Right.
So the English consider me Irish, and the Irish consider me English.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was going to say, you don't
I'm going to
sound
become Welsh and annoy everyone.
you don't sound a little bit Cockney. There's no Cockney there.
Sorry?
There's no Cockney there that I can hear.
No. But there again, you must remember that nobody spoke like EastEnders until that show came out.
Well, that's
Yeah,
not
you're right.
exactly true, because I worked not far from Tower Bridge, just about half a mile east of Tower Bridge in the 70s, and a lot of the subcontractors that we used were absolutely identical to the EastEnders. So
Well,
Was
they
EastEnders
merged
open? Was that show on in the 70s?
no.
It was
It
on
did-
in the early 80s.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Oh, interesting.
yeah. Okay, so we're off to Paul now.
Yeah.
All right, I better hide myself. See you later, bye. Right. Well done, James, says Elizabeth. There you are. You have a fan. Okay, Paul. Oh,
The check in the post.
Ted, you're ready to bring Paul in?
Yeah, I will.
3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome, Toastmasters, would-be Toastmasters listeners and friends, to segment 3 of this offering of the Talk Show for Talkers this week. And I know you have been waiting because we teed it up. We told you what Division A Director of District 71, Paul O'Mahony, also of this parish, the Talk Show for Talkers, is going to be talking to you about what the district mission is. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Ted. I'd like to have a bet with you that when you joined Toastmasters International, you had absolutely no idea there was such a thing as a district, and you weren't interested. You knew there was a club, and you knew the club belonged to Toastmasters. You didn't know how international Toastmasters was. You didn't know how big it was. You hadn't a clue what countries it was in, and you hadn't an idea how on earth it was run. You didn't know there was an international headquarters, and it never bothered you to think about how on earth would you organize a big tanker like Toastmasters International. And I'll bet you that quite a lot of people, their entire career in Toastmasters, they haven't had a shred of interest in anything called a district, let alone a division, and let alone an area. Clubs have a mission, and that's what you were interested in. And clubs were there to help members to get on and become better communicators and leaders. That's pretty straightforward. What is your, well, first of all, what is the district name? Sorry, I mean, what's your district name? Who is your district director? You don't know. Okay, that's fine. Do you know any other district where it is? You probably don't. Although the interesting thing is that some of the listeners to this podcast know everything. They've read the governing documents of Toastmasters International. They've read their club constitution. But how many of you listeners who've done all that can tell me what your district mission is? Would you say your district mission is to develop leaders? Do I see any nods? Would you say your district is there to set up new clubs? Would you say your district mission is to support the clubs so that they might become excellent? So which is the number one? Which is the first thing that the district is there? While you're thinking about that, let me tell you what I mean by the district. Clubs have got people whose job it is to give them support. They're called area directors. Area directors have got people who are there to give them support. They're called division directors. And division directors have got people who are there to give them support, and they're called district leaders, district directors. And when we're talking about the district, we're talking about all of those people. We're not talking about the club. We're talking about all that kind of structure that's there, the people, all that time that people are investing to do something. And what's their number one job? Okay, I'll tell you. Then the mission of your district is to establish new clubs. To be exact, it's to build new clubs. And then there's a second part of the sentence, which is to support clubs to become excellent. So if you've got two parts of a sentence, one is build clubs and the other is to establish new clubs, and the other is to help the existing clubs to become excellent, which is more important?
Paul, I got to stop you. For some reason or other, which I have no idea, we seem to have stopped recording. But let me just check, because this is weird. It's still showing as recording, but nothing happening. I'm stopping, and I'm going to go back and listen.
Is to establish new clubs. To be exact, it's to build new clubs. And then there's a second part of the sentence, which is to support clubs to become excellent. So if you've got two parts of a sentence, one is build clubs and the other is to establish new clubs, and the other is to help the existing clubs to become excellent, which is more important?
Paul, I got to stop. Okay. That sounds like it was absolutely perfect. It must have been just the computer not catching up with real life. Nothing was moving. So anyway, can you pick it up from there, Paul?
I can, of course.
Good man. 3, 2, 1, go.
Now, in any job, and all of you have had a job at some stage, if you've got a number one priority and you've got a number two priority, what do you spend most of your energy on? You spend it on the number one priority, don't you? So let's just say that it's very important to support clubs to become excellent. That's very important. How much time is spent on that in Toastmasters by the district? An awful lot. What percentage of total time spent by the district is spent on building new clubs? Not so much. Now, I want to credit a past international president of Toastmasters International for having the clarity to make this issue, to bring this issue out into the open in a webinar last week. Alfred, what was his second name, Ted? James, Moira, I know him as Alfred.
Heitzing,
yeah. Tremendous influence on me, and I think on anyone who heard him. Because what it does, if you take that seriously and you say that the district should be putting most of its energy not all of it, but most of it, into setting up new clubs. It means that the district has to stop doing so much to support the clubs. Pretty logical. Otherwise, everyone's going to get stressed and overworked. And I don't think there's anyone who would have the role of being a district leader who would say that they don't really have enough to do. They're doing as much as their life gives them an opportunity to do, and some people do an extraordinary amount. So what can we, as district leaders, drop? And that's the question I want you listeners who are leaders or even members of clubs to ask yourself. Because otherwise there's no point in following Alfred's logic. Just treat it as an intellectual exercise. But how many new clubs has District 71 set up in the last 4 years? I don't know the answer, but it's available. How many new clubs are we going to set up this year? Some of you might know that Toastmasters for Golf is a brand new club in the middle of chartering. Well, that's at least one. And there have been others as well. But is there a way in which we can tweak our time, effort, innovative side, imagination, in order to withdraw support from the clubs and give it instead to setting up new clubs? That's the challenge. That's the challenge that came across. And it's going to be up to either district policymakers, and by that I mean the district leadership team, to propose a policy and get full support of their district officers. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is that it's done from bottom up, which is that each area director, each division director, each one of the district leadership team decides, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to wait for a district director to tell me that, Paul, I want you to set up 4 new clubs in Cork. There are innumerable reasons why that can't be done. You wouldn't be regarded as a failure this year as a district leader if you didn't succeed in getting several new clubs set up under your influence. Everyone would forgive you. But leaders are made to rise above challenges, and I'm not going to give you the... But leaders are made to rise above challenges, and I'm not here to give you a sermon on it. Just want you to come up with your own answer. Are you going to do it? Are you going to, as a district leader, withdraw some forms of support from your clubs and instead put that investment into setting up new clubs? Or are you going to stick to the old ways? And as Pat Johnson, who was recently on the show, says, people are inclined to stick to what they already know. And she's been encouraging us to get into our discomfort zone, get out of your comfort zone. So there we are. Maybe let's get a word out of James on this topic, since it's been sprung on him out of the blue. James, your opinion, please. Love to have it.
I think it's good to have targets. I think it's good to have objectives. And I think it's good to be challenging to achieve them. I would be careful about new clubs at the cost of existing clubs. we've had already seen what the effect of the pandemic and the use of Zoom has done to membership. We need to be imaginative about the value of membership, how it can be spread across all sectors, all clubs. But I think the conversation is a good one, and the challenge is a good one.
I suggest to you that that is a really popular point of view, that is the current culture. And the current culture is not that the district's role is to set up new clubs. That is a new idea. And yet it's been written down and it's been laid down, no doubt, and it wasn't invented by District 71. It's a Toastmasters International policy, if you like. This is our mission: set up new clubs, districts. And the worry I have is that not enough people are going to change their behavior, and that the status quo is going to be preserved, and that the district will not turn on to its mission this year. Maybe it will next year, but I suspect it might take a couple of years. Ted?
Well, interestingly, Paul, there have been over 4,000 new clubs set up, corporate clubs, since last March, since the pandemic came upon us.
You mean worldwide?
Worldwide, yes. 4,000 clubs. It's still, and I think James gave the answer to this question that you're asking: how should the district go about it? It's people. It's the people who set up the clubs, not the district. You're going to get somebody who's in an organization and he can see the benefit of what Toastmasters can bring to that organization. And consequently, he can go out and say to the people in the organization, would some of you like to become members of Toastmasters? Because I agree with what James said, that what's happening at the moment is that we're getting clubs being set up by current members. So now they're becoming members of two clubs, and we're not growing the membership. All we're doing is taking from one and putting it into the other. And that has consequences also, because what if Joe Bloggs decides to leave that club after he finds that he has a much better experience in the second club?
Well, I think, listeners, that what we've brought out from under the woodwork is that there isn't consensus, that there's skepticism about the role of the district in relation to setting up new clubs, that we have a mission which is not universally known, understood, or supported. I wonder what we're going to do about that in District 71 and in your district.
Great question, Paul, and a lovely way to finish that segment. And please come back tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to be speaking again with James Finnegan. Beg your pardon, I had a bit of a mind block there. We'll be speaking to James Finnegan again tomorrow. He's going to tell us about what a VPPR does. And a VPPR is a Vice President of Public Relations.
Now, by the way, how many of you have actually listened to Alfred's presentation? Ted has.
I did, yeah. I found it very good.
I saw half of it, but it was very much
some very good clips.
It was directed at the DLT far more than the club, possibly to more maybe to division. But I didn't find it particularly enthralling as a club officer. Folks, we went somewhat over
it
time.
Wasn't aimed at club officers. Yeah.
Can you
aimed at the leadership teams, yeah.
Yeah,
Moira, I agree with you entirely. It wasn't. It was spoken to district.
Yeah, it was supposed to. It was originally intended.
And in a kind of a way.
It was originally intended to be part of the district officer training, but it didn't happen. So they decided to put it on independently. But I think it was a mistake. Well, not a
But
mistake, but they,
all of that is like
Yeah.
background
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? But the key thing is it was a message to district leaders,
yeah,
and he was invited into the district by some mechanism. Perhaps he was in,
Well, he's a past international president.
but he may have been influenced to decide to come into District 71 by something that was said to him, or perhaps Jared Mannix had thought, right, I now have clarity. This is because he did change his leadership message from we want to be a distinguished district to we want to be a Smedley. And if you look at the statistics, you can't be a Smedley unless you set up a load of other clubs.
A Smedley
Impossible.
district. A Smedley district, you mean, Paul? Is it?
Yeah. You can't be a Smedley district from our position unless we set up an awful lot of more clubs, 60 of them to say, for sake of argument.
Okay.
It's now,
Well, if each division could set up 4 new clubs in its term of the 12 months,
that is exactly what Alfred said, and that's exactly what Jared Mannix said at the district officer training about 2 weeks ago. It's 1 club per area. Now, if each area could set up 1 new club, which really means, in effect, are we recording this, Moira? Is this live on YouTube?
it's
YouTube,
always
yeah.
live on YouTube until we
Okay.
finish the recording. You know this.
Yeah.
Well, I was speaking to a district director recently, not a district director, a division director recently in another district, who told me that he wanted to get new clubs set up in the division. And what he did is he said to his area directors, would any of you, are any of you keen to set up new clubs? If you are, I'd really like. And all 4 of them said, no, I'd prefer work on the existing club. So none of the area directors wanted to do it.
Mhm.
Now, how on earth, if that's what they signed up to do at the beginning of the year, that was their initial commitment. I assume it's not going to change during the year unless they have an epiphany or something. And they're not going to spend any time setting up new clubs.
Yeah.
So who's going to set up the new clubs?
Well, that's interesting because it is part of the agenda for division directors to do their best to set up new clubs, or if the opportunity presents itself.
Well, it's on the mission of the area directors, the division directors, and the DLT.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah. And that's been there for a long time, Paul.
The problem is that at the level of area directors, and I think at the level of division directors, and I think at the level of district directors, that has not been regarded as the number one thing.
See what you mean, yeah.
And, and okay, you just have to hold your hands up and say, look, we either change the mission, which means we have got to go through, and I don't, I would prefer address the challenge of setting up new clubs than changing the mission. Because it's clubs who want to become as good as possible. I mean, look at Blarney Club. The members in the club want that club to be as good as possible. Or if they don't, the club is doomed.
Paul, can you see
So
them?
therefore,
Paul, I get you have your notifications turned on so that they come through on the stream. Every time somebody WhatsApp you, every time somebody WhatsApp you, it comes over on the stream.
Yeah. No,
We can hear it, John.
that's now fixed because
Okay, good.
the only thing that makes a sound on my machine is WhatsApp.
Okay.
Everything else doesn't do anything.
You can,
Anyway, look, let's just say
okay.
I sent the recording of the Alfred's webinar.
Yeah.
And there was I think Division A had the best turnout by a long way.
Right. Very good.
But I sent it to all the area directors and asked them, would they please share it with club presidents? Because you see, if you do that, you say to club presidents and club committees, it's actually your responsibility to make this club better.
Yeah. Paul, I get the impression too that Alfred's role in the organisation, being an international past president, is to go to different districts with that message.
I really agree with you, Ted.
I think he's an ambassador, and that's his objective, you know.
And you know what? 'Twould be interesting to know what. But I thought his message could usefully go to every single district leadership team. And if a district decided, no, we don't want to do that, district know what to do. They take that to their region. And they have a debate within the region. They try and get support within the region.
Yeah.
And they bring in the international director as well. And they take it to the council, the policy making body. And I think they'd have no chance of getting it accepted, because the good thing is that if you do set up a club, you get more money into the organization. That has to be remembered.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Even if they're all dual members, they're all paying more money. More money means better service, we'd have to say. So it's really, you know, if you were the Jan Rex and whatever, you'd be saying, look, guys, it's going to be really hard to get clubs set up with, 17 new members, new Toastmasters. Let's encourage people to set up get dual membership. That's a quick way of getting money, and we need money.
Yeah.
Right, can we press on, please?
You don't say that.
It's a good, Listen, Moira is urging us on there, Paul. And if you want to get out of here before me, we better crack on. Will you introduce me, Paul, for segment 4?
And segment 4 is you talking with James, yeah?
Yeah. And you might want to throw in your tuppence worth as well. We'll come at him from left and right, Paul. He's after getting away with murder so far.
Okay, are you ready, Paul? 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome, listeners, to part 4 of the Talk Show for Talkers this week. And those of you who listen to the second part of the show, the second episode this week, will remember how brilliant James Finnegan was when he was talking with Ted Melanphy. And Ted finished the interview and he went away and he did a bit of hard thinking, and he couldn't think of anything that he would want to do more than continue conversation with James Finnegan, the Vice President for Public Relations. Paul has an objection to acronyms, but Vice President for Public Relations. So today we bring you the continuation of Ted Melanphy talking with James Finnegan. Take it away, Ted.
Thank you very much, Paul. James, this is the part I've been looking forward to, because I want to pick your brain now with regards what you think a VPPR should do. And in our interview 2 days ago, you mentioned that you were helping, or you were asked to help, our PR manager for the district, Elizabeth, with social media. So can you expand on that for us?
Well, thank you, Ted, and thank you, Paul. Elizabeth has an awesome responsibility. She has to cover a district with social media, with publicity, with demands from on high and demands from below. So she very kindly asked for help. And as I said to you before, my attitude in life is I'll say yes. We'll learn something from it. I will learn something from it, and hopefully be of some assistance. Now, fortunately, my level of knowledge of social media is not much, but what she hasn't allowed me to do is to get involved in the Facebook publicity of Toastmaster events. And I thought to myself, well, what can I do? So I decided that on every Monday, I'd put up a motivation quote. And on every Wednesday, I'd put up a word of the week. And on Saturdays, we put up a saying of the week. Now, I'm delighted to say that the various clubs around the district have passed that message on. And I think that's fundamental to a VPPR role, in that what you're doing is you're dropping pebbles into the pond and the ripples are going out. And the various other clubs and members can say, oh, that's interesting. I can use that. Or I can play with that and adapt that to my needs. Or they can say, well, that's a load of rubbish. I'm ignoring that and I'll wait for the next one to come along. And if you ask me what is the role of a VPPR, which is frankly a title I very rare, I think I've used it once. The role is simple. It's the old-fashioned rule. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them again. And everything boils down to the club. Tell them the club exists. What do you do? What do you stand for? What happens? Who's involved? Number 2, tell them what happened at the last meeting. Make it sound as though I'm not going to miss the next one. That's brilliant. That happened, that happened, that happened. Tell them what's going to happen. There's a competition coming up. There's a guest speaker coming up. There is a webinar from an expert from abroad or something that will be of interest. Pass that on. That's a VPPR's role. Now, how they do it, they can use social media. They can use local media, and we're very fortunate here in that we have a local radio station called, with stunning originality, Radio Kerry. And we've built up a relationship with some of the presenters that if they need someone to speak on a subject, on a topic, on a vox pop, they'll get in touch with us. Deirdre Walsh and talk about. People forget about print media. And print media is still very important, particularly at the local level. We have 2 publications here called, again with stunning originality, Kerry's Eye and The Kerryman, long established papers. Now, I went to the Kerryman because I saw that all the sports clubs have a weekly column. And I thought, well, if the sports clubs can have a weekly column, why can't we? So every Monday morning, I sit down to write 500 words about Toastmaster meetings. And I tell them what's coming up, and I tell them what they've missed. And the other thing, too, is that we celebrate the achievements of our members, not necessarily just in Toastmasters, but in their work lives, in their professional lives. We have there's a social media paper called Tralee Today that appears on Facebook. And Dermot Green is very helpful in publicising events and competitions and achievements. So there you have another one. And then we have our own Facebook page. Now, that's, as I say, putting ripples in the pond. And let me tell you that not everyone agreed with it. They said that, that sounds like a lot of work. And yet our president went into a coffee shop recently and was handed his coffee with the words, "There you go, Mr. President." So the ripples get around and you'd be amazed. And because the work I'm doing at district level, I can use at local level. But if you ask me what the best advertisement for a club is, it's the individual members. Where are you off to?
You're so right. You're so right, James. And I said that you were going to bring a couple of gold nuggets and some gems, and you were going to sprinkle them amongst us. And you certainly threw those gems and nuggets into the pool, and you have caused ripples. Because I think what you have said there about getting onto the local newspaper, putting in a word of the week, putting in a thought for the week, putting in a saying, I think that's fantastic. I think that's what all VPPRs should be doing. I think that's excellent. And you made it sound so simple. That's brilliant. Now I'm going to ask you a question. What's the difference between a quotation and a saying?
Ted, I'll just say this for your ears because I know that there's nobody else listening. There is no difference.
Well done. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I thought you were going to say something very philosophical, like a quotation is something that's said by such and such a person, where a saying is said by some fellow who's after joining Toastmasters or something like that. Anybody can give a saying. Go ahead, Paul.
James, a couple of questions really about Kerry and how Toastmasters is doing in Kerry. You've said something about Tralee. It sounds to me as if you have got a plan to raise the awareness of Toastmasters in the wider community. Just in terms of that, first of all, what effect has that had on increasing membership locally from the local community? How many new members have been attracted from your catchment area during this year so far?
That's a good question, Paul, and I look at it as a short, medium, and long-term effect. The short-term effect is tell them that we're here. The medium effect is that sounds interesting, I might come along. And the long-term is that you get them in as long-term members.
Okay, so it's a sales funnel.
Yes, and I'm
sales funnel,
yes,
right?
it is. That's exactly
lovely.
it. But I think your first point is that you have to have a plan. Now, let me tell you that I'm building on previous VPPR's work, particularly here in Tralee. Lily Tagney did sterling work and was very imaginative with regard to, particularly with the print media. However, all these things you're putting blocks on blocks on blocks the whole time, and you're trying different things, and who knows who sees what. And it might be a case of, well, I won't join now, but I'll join later on, or they'll start. I mean, the most easiest way to describe the success is the number of increases in the Facebook page. It's a simple gauge, but it's a good gauge. The fact that the radio contact us when they need a vox pop, the fact that Tralee Today will say, we need a couple of hundred words on something, can you oblige? Of course, that's how it's done. And it's a softly catchy monkey approach. There's no way I can turn around and say, we're going to have 20 new members by the end of this year, but we might.
Okay, so that sounds to me as if Toastmasters in Tralee is becoming more relevant to the local community, and that it requires a long-term effort, and that it's only at the end of an effort, if you like, or considerable way in, that you get people who will become members. Let me ask you about Killarney then, which is a big centre in County Kerry, which has all of the usual things. It's got businesses, it's got local people who live there, and it's got visitors. What is the situation in Killarney in relation to Toastmasters?
Well, Killarney, of course, it's the home club of the district director. So that in itself has a focus and has a remit. It was heavily involved in the recent 24-hour Toastmasters meeting that went literally around the world. So, like all clubs, Killarney has had difficulties with regard to being unable to meet physically. But as well as Killarney, we have clubs in Listowel. Listowel is a town famous for Listowel writers, and the gifts that they bring to their Toastmaster meetings are phenomenal. And they have an enthusiastic and dedicated president in Derry Butler, who has been a title holder or a presence holder in Toastmasters in every conceivable role and rank. And we have a very good club in Newcastle West, and their meetings are like fireside chats, but they're wonderfully connected. And what I've noticed about the clubs in Tralee is that each club supports each other. And Mike McGeegan is very good at sharing things like area finals around the different clubs. So that gives them a chance to publicize their existence and hopefully attract new members. We are all in the business of trying to attract new members, or at the very least, retain the members we have.
Yeah, well done,
And,
James. I have another question for you. And I can only ask this question since we're coming to the conclusion of this week's talk show for talkers. And since you mentioned newspapers, I have lots of sources because I was working in the newspaper industry. I worked for the Irish Examiner for 26 years. And I have colleagues who are down in Kerry's Eye printing that publication. Is it true that as a VPPR, you used a strategy of getting married in Tralee Toastmasters Club to a lady in her 20s? Is that true,
yes,
James?
that is true.
Right.
The second hardest speech I ever have to make in my life was when I came home to explain to my wife how I got married again. But the interesting story about the second wedding is that she left me before at the break time, never to be seen again.
Oh, she did not, did
No,
she?
she-
You were divorced. You were divorced before you even got to the marriage.
What can I say, Ted? It was annulled.
Oh, for God's sake! Jeez, I thought that was a fantastic. And I was going to ask you, would you send some of those 20-year-olds up to Blarney Toastmasters, because there's a couple of fellas there they could really do with a kind of a pep. That's brilliant.
But it was a great way to show how relevant Toastmasters could be.
Yeah.
What's the best, the father of the bride speech, the best man speech? These are occasions when you need a little bit of help.
All right, yeah, that's true. And so you were given the groom speech, is it?
I was given the groom speech, yes.
Brilliant.
And I'm sure that when they saw the photographs, they said to themselves, he must have money.
Well, that's the first thing I thought when you came on here today. You must have loads of money, actually. James, it has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege having you with us. I'm going to have to ask you, would you like to come along to Blarney Toastmasters some night and spread some of that gold dust around with regards pebbles in the pond?
Would love to, Ted. It would be my privilege and pleasure.
Thank you very much, James. The invitation is on the way to you.
Just one last question for a second, James. Would you think of becoming a dual member and bringing together Kerry and Cork? You know, there's a lot to be said for bridging the rivalry between the two counties. So you might like to think of dual membership. Would that appeal to you?
That's a great challenge, Paul. As an Englishman arriving in Ireland, that was one bridge crossed. I think that was a lot easier than bridging Kerry and Cork. But thank you for your kind offer.
Answered like a true Toastmaster. And listeners, that is our concluding word for this week on the Talk Show for Talkers. We hope to see you again next week. I'd like to thank James Finnegan after coming all the way from Kerry to Cork. He came over the county bounds. I'd like to thank Moira O'Brien for being the brains behind this show. And of course, I let Paul thank himself.
Oh, thank you all. Thank you all, listeners. It's been absolutely very generous of you to listen to us.
Bye. Well done, lads.
Bye.
James, that was excellent.
Ted, you have to run. Didn't you say half?
No, quarter to you have to run.
Great.
I have a meeting at 4:45. I have a class. I have a class to give at 4:45. James, what part of England were you born in?
London.
He said that on the podcast.
Just shows.
James, I wanted to just let you know why I asked you why I gave you the offer of becoming a dual member. I have very recently become the vice president for membership in Blarney Club.
All right.
And the club is in need of another 6 members to be able to become distinguished or president's distinguished. So one way of doing this is that the membership team is going to ask everybody who it meets, how about becoming a dual member with the club that has the Blarney Stone? So I will be looking and hoping that there could be dual members. I happen to know that Anthony Garvey, who's a very experienced Toastmaster, is a member of Shilling
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Toastmasters in the UK. So it isn't an unusual thing for